Alright, the next section, first off a little correction here, that should say 3.3. Okay, so for the next section I have here, 3.3 is adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So if you recall in 3.1, we were adding and subtracting fractions that already had a common denominator. Now here we don't. So the first thing we're going to do in these problems is we're going to look at the numbers on the bottom, 3 and 6. And we're going to find our common multiple between 3 and 6. Again, if you need to, pull up your multiplication table. So I'm going to scroll up here. Here is 3. Here is 6. The first number they both have in common is 6. Okay? So I know my common denominator here is 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write two fractions with the denominator of 6. Now this problem is adding, so I'm going to put a plus in the middle. Now I'm going to do what I call stare and compare. I want you to notice in the first fraction I had a 3. Now I have a 6. So didn't we have to multiply that by 2? And if we did it on the bottom, we're also going to do it to the top. That's going to leave me with a 4 over 6. Now if I do stare and compare again, if you notice I have a 6 here, well, I also have a 6 here. I didn't change that. So I'm not going to change this one either. Now, since my numbers on the bottom are the same, I can go ahead and add my numbers on the top. 4 plus 1 should give me 5 all over 6. And that's how I add or subtract fractions with a different denominator. Now, I'm going to do the same thing over here in this next problem. I'm going to look at my two denominators, 6 and 12. And again, if I pull up my table, what I want to do is I want to look at both 6 and 12, and the first number that they both have in common is 12. That's my common denominator. That's why I'm saying that my chart comes in really handy. I can see it, I can look at it, I can use it as a reference. So 12 is my common denominator. In my first fraction, what did I multiply 6 by to get 12? I multiplied it by 2. Well, I need to do that on the top as well, and that's going to leave me with a 10. In my second fraction, what did I multiply 12 by to get 12? By 1. I didn't change it, so I'm not going to change my other fraction over here either. I'm going to add those two fractions together. Now I have 11 over 12. All right. So let's take a look at the next one here. So 4 over 5 and 3 over 40. So again, if you think about our table, my table doesn't go up to 40. But if you look at my number 5, so let's try the blue pen. Here's my number 5. And if you notice right here, 40 is one of the multiples of 5. So 40 is going to be my common denominator. So I'm going to write two fractions here with my number being 40. And I'm going to say, what did I multiply 5 by? Well, I had to multiply that by 8. So I'm also going to do this one here. 8 times 4 gives me 32. I didn't change this number here, so that's going to stay a 3. When I add them together, that's going to leave me with 35 over 40. I can reduce that. I can divide them both by 5. 5 goes into 35 7 times. 5 goes into 40 8 times. People often ask me, do I have to reduce? Yes, every single time. If you can reduce the fractions, then you got to make sure that you do them. All right, so let's take a look at the next problem that we have here. 7 over 15 plus 5 over 12. I'm going to come back to my table because I want to see 15 and 12. So let me clean this up a little bit with my eraser so that I can look at my numbers here. Okay, there we go. And I'm looking for 15 and I'm looking for 12. So here's 12 and here's 15. What's the first number that they both have in common? Let me do this. Let me do this. Do I see anything in common yet? Here we go. They both have a 60 in common. So there's my common multiple. All right. So I'm going to come back over here and I say, all right, well, 60 is my common denominator. And if you go back and you look at your chart, what did I have to multiply 15 by to get 60? I had to multiply 15 by 4. And you say, how do I know that? Because all I've got to do is go right up, and there it is. And I had to multiply 12 by 5. That's why my chart is so helpful for me. Okay, so we multiplied this one here by 4, so we're going to do that one by 4. Multiplied this one here by 5, so we're going to do that one by 5. So 4 times 7 is 28. 5 times 5 is 25. So my bottom number is 60. 28 plus 25 should give me something like 53. And I'm done. All right. Let's take a look at the next problem that I have here. 1 over 3 plus 1 over 9 plus 1 over 27. Again, I know my multiplication tables. I know that that 27 is a multiple of 3 and 27 is also a multiple of 9. So right now I'm going to write down 3 fractions with the numbers 27 on the bottom, because that is going to be my common denominator. I know I multiplied 9 or 3 by 9, so I have to do it on the top. 9 times 1 is still 9. I multiplied 9 by 3, so that's a 3 here. We didn't change this number here, so I'm not going to change that number there. Here's my 27. So 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 more gives me 13. I cannot reduce that fraction, and so I'll leave it alone. All right, and so for the next problem that I have here, 7 over 18 plus 2 over 9 plus 5 over 6. Again, because I'm familiar with my multiplication table, I know that 18 is a multiple of 9, because 9 times 2 is 18, and 18 is also a multiple of 6. So my common denominator here is going to be 18. Now again, if you need to do this, then one thing I always want you to do is to refer back to your table. So here's my table. Here's 9, look, there's 18. Here's 6, there's 18 as well. So that's going to be real helpful in using that. Again, I encourage you to use your chart. It comes in real handy. Okay, so now let's take a look. In the first fraction, I didn't change the bottom, so I'm not going to change the top. In the second fraction, we multiplied 9 by 2. So I need to do 2 times 2. That's going to leave me with 4. In my last fraction, I multiplied this by 3, so I'm going to do that one by 3. That's a 15. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add my numbers together. 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 plus 15 should give me 26. Now, I can reduce that fraction. I can divide them at least both by 2. And that should give me 13 over 9. And now I'm done. All right. I want to give you a minute to try this one here. So again, look at your chart. If you need to, find what the common multiple is between 8 and 16. You might want to hit pause because I'm going to write the answer in a second. All right. If you came up with 16 as your common denominator, you're doing this right. We multiplied that one by 2, so we got to do this one by 2. That's 14. We didn't change this one, so I'm not changing that one. That gives me 11 over 16. All right. So let's take a look at the next one. Again, 26 is a multiple of 13, so 26 is my common denominator. I'm multiplying that by 2, so I'm multiplying this one by 2. That's 10. I'm not changing this denominator, so I'm not changing the number on the top. And that's 7 over 26. All right. So for the next one that I have here, 10 over 13 minus 7 over 10. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my table here, and I'm going to take my eraser just to clean this up a little bit. But I want you to notice the two numbers that I'm looking at are 10 and 13. So here's 10, here's 13, and the first number that they both have in common is 130. All right, so now let me take my pen, write 130 on both of them. I had to multiply this one by 10, so I need to multiply that one by 10. That's 100. I need to multiply this one by 13, so I'm going to multiply that one by 13. I'm actually going to use my chart since I have it right here. 13 times 7 is 91. So I'm going to go ahead and write 91 right here. I'm subtracting, so I'm going to go ahead and just take away 91 from 100, end up with 9 over 130. And now I'm done. All right, so for the next problem I have here, again, I'm going to go ahead and use my rule of finding the prime factorization. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down my number 8. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. Now 20 is 2 times 2 times 5. So my LCD, again, if you look at which one has more 2's, the 8 does. So 1, 2, 3, and I also need the number 5. That's going to leave me with 40. That is going to be my common denominator, everyone. Okay? So again, I want you to think about what it is I'm doing here. Breaking up my numbers, then finding the prime factorization, ask myself, where do I have more 2's? Where do I have more 5's? The number 8 has more 2's. The number 20 has more 5's. Multiply my numbers out, and there's my LCD. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to write them in red. I'm going to write two fractions with the denominator of 40, subtracting, so I put a minus there. Well, what did I multiply 8 by to get 40? Multiply that by 5. So I got to do 5 up here as well. That's 25. What did I multiply 20 by to get 40? Multiply that by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and subtract. 25 minus 6 should just give me 19 all over 40. And I'm done. All right. It takes a little bit of time, but if you take your time with the problem, you'll be able to figure it out. All right. Let's try this next one that I have here. 28 and 21. All right. So I'm going to write it over here where I have a little bit of room. 28 is 2 times 2 times 7. 21 is 3 times 7. So my LCD here, I need two 2's. I need the number 3 and I need the number 7. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to multiply those numbers out. So I'm going to take 2 times 2 times 3 times 7, and I'm coming up with 84. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to write two fractions with the denominator of 84. And I'm going to ask myself, okay, well, what did I multiply 28 by to get 84? And I multiplied 28 by 3 to give me 84. So I need to do 3 times 3. That's going to leave me with 9. What did I multiply 21 by to get 84? Multiply that one by 4. That's going to leave me with an 8. All I'm going to do now, my friends, is I'm going to subtract. 9 minus 8 is 1 all over 84. All right, so the last part here of 3.3, we got a couple of word problems to do. And the first one says, let's find the perimeter. Okay, so again, if you remember, the perimeter is talking about the distance around. So I'm going to go ahead and add these numbers together because I already have a common denominator. So 4 over 5 plus another 4 over 5 will leave me with 8 over 5. I'm going to go ahead and add these numbers together because, again, those have a common denominator. 1 over 3 plus another 1 over 3 leaves me with 2 over 3. Between 5 and 3, my common denominator is 15. All right, so I multiplied this one here by 3, so I'm going to do that one by 3. That's at 24. I multiplied this one here by 5, so I'm going to do that one there by 5. That's at 10. So that leaves me with 34 over 15. And again, because I'm dealing with perimeter, that's just centimeters. Okay, the next problem I have here says the slowest mammal is a three-toed sloth from South America. The sloth has an average ground speed of 1/10 miles per hour. In trees, it can accelerate to 17/100 miles per hour. How much faster can the sloth travel in the trees? Okay, so remember when we said how much more, how much faster, it's telling me I'm going to subtract. Okay, so I'm going to take my bigger number, 17/100, and I'm going to subtract my smaller number, 1/10. Well, my common denominator is going to be 100. I didn't change this one, so I'll leave that as 17. I needed to multiply that one by 10, so I'll do this one by 10. And when I subtract, 17 minus 10 is just 7/100. All right. Now, for the last problem that I have here in 3.3, it says, find the inner diameter of the washer. And it gives me a hint. It says, use the outer diameter and subtract the washer widths. Okay, we're trying to find the inner diameter, meaning we're trying to figure out how wide it is in there. Well, we know the whole thing is an inch, and we know each of these pieces here are 3/16 of an inch. So what we need to do is we need to add those two pieces here together. So 3/16 plus another 3/16 is going to leave me with something like, what, 6/16? Okay, now what I want to do is I want to take my whole piece here and I want to subtract those two pieces. So I'm going to write 1 minus 6/16. Now, because I'm thinking about fractions here, I'm going to think about this one. I'm going to erase it real quick because I want to think about that one as a fraction. So how about if I think about it as 1/1? And because this number is a 16, my common denominator will have to be a 16. So I'll think of this one as 16/16 minus 6/16. If I subtract that, that's going to leave me with 10/16, but I can reduce that fraction. I can divide them both by 2. That's going to leave me with 5/8 of an inch. And we are done.